Alright, so today you're going to be put into a situation where a field site has already been found. Either yourself or your teammates have found a couple of specimens that are worth collecting. What you're going to do, or what we're going to put you through, is the idea of, once things have been excavated a little bit, whether it's paleontology, archaeology, marine biology, recording that information in the field is absolutely critical. So I'm going to walk you through some steps that I'm taking. I want you to kind of critique these steps. They're not necessarily perfect. I'm going to collect some data. I'm going to share that data with you, and then you're going to then process that information. One critical reason it's important to collect as much information as you possibly can before you leave the field is once you excavate, or once you take that information out of its original context, there's no way to get it back. So before anybody takes anything out of a field site, they start taking field notes. Okay, so I've got a very simple beginning to field notes here. I've labeled the date. I've started to outline the excavation site. I have information in here about the length and the width of the site. I have where north is, and then I also put where my 0, 0 mark is for my grid. Okay, notice I'm using lined paper so that I can keep track of where the specimens are and where that data is going to be collected from. Okay, what I'm going to do next is show you some of the field tools that I'll be using, and then I will start to excavate that information out of the ground. So there are several field tools that I have access to today to first remove some of the debris around the fossils. Our situation is very different than what you'd find out in the field. We're dealing with very loose material, so actually getting to our fossils is going to be extremely easy. Normally we would have potentially diamond tip saws, we would have rock hammers and chisels to make sure that we can penetrate into the ground and remove this unnecessary material. Instead of using those bigger materials, we're going to kind of fast forward to the part where we have to get delicate with these fossils. So I have a small shovel to use to kind of get some of that bigger material away. From there I have brushes to remove the smaller grains. Okay. As far as measuring tools, I have a handheld tape measure. I also have a larger tape measure to try to figure out where all these things are. And then finally I have a compass, which my compass is very rudimentary compared to what geologists use. We also have compasses on our phones and technology to kind of help us with that. But those are the tools that I'm going to use. What I'm going to do now is spend some time removing some of this excess material so that I have a better idea of what I'm dealing with. So after the very first initial excavation process, I found 4 different specimens here in the ground. Before I do anything else, I need to start documenting the location of these different specimens in relation to the dig site. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my rulers to kind of fill in my grid so that I have an idea when I get back to the lab where these things were in relation to each other, and then also spatially. So all I've done is very simply taken my grid, used my 00 down here in the corner as my point of reference, okay? And then from there, used my tools to figure out the location of these different specimens, okay? And all I've done so far, since I haven't really taken a look at what they could be, is just numbered those on my map. Okay, so I have a relationship What we need to do next is try to get an idea of what they're in, okay? What I mean by that is what type of sediment, what type of rock could these fossils be with, okay? And that's going to give us a little bit of information about the environment that these fossils were buried in, okay? So I'm going to take a quick look at that, write down some notes, and then we'll move on to the next step. So I took a look at the sediment. What I've done for you guys is I've taken a couple pictures with a measuring tape so that you can kind of see specifically, if you were here, what kind of sediment you'd be dealing with. What you need to do is kind of interpret that information, that data. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to go to each individual specimen and start to collect some data, in particular length, width on some of those things. So I might have to remove them in order to get the dimensions, but that's the next set of data that I'm going to collect, is individual specimen data. So I've recorded all of the necessary information for you to complete this lab, from the overall excavation site to the locations of the specific fossils, to what the rock is like, and then information specifically about each specimen. I will also share with you pictures of these different specimens so you can get a clear idea of what we're dealing with and start to make some interpretations. Your goal now is to answer the questions within the lab using the data that you're provided, and then also kind of critiquing and thinking through the process that I just went through. Are there things that I should do better? Did I do everything I needed to do? So this is the conclusion of your tutorial. Now it's on to answering those questions.